This is a presentation on the Range Blaster, one of Splatoon's most iconic weapons. It's the most Slayer weapon of the franchise, basically. It's amazing at killing, but at the same time horrible at painting, and it's probably the most extreme example of this. And for that reason, it really requires a lot of team building to enable it, but in the right team, it can be worth it. Now, I wouldn't say it's super high skill floor, even though it's not the easiest weapon to use, but the skill ceiling is really, really high. This is a weapon that's really, really good in the right hands. Now, this weapon is very popular thanks to Rochara, and because of how the weapon was incredible in Splatoon 1, especially at the end. Speaking of Splatoon 1, it actually didn't start out being really good, and that despite the blasters in early Splatoon 1 being able to one-hit KO even with an indirect hit, which was incredibly dumb. But the thing is, Range Blaster wasn't the best at utilizing this because in Splatoon 1 its radius was smaller compared to regular Blaster, Luna Blaster and others. And also because the kit just wasn't good. Range Blaster really needs a good kit. I mean, every weapon in the game requires a good kit, but Range Blaster more than most weapons. I mean, the vanilla Range Blaster used to have Splash Wall and Ink Strike, which is not good for the Range Blaster. Because, I mean, Ink Wall, it's not the best weapon I'm using it, because, I mean, you can still, like, hit behind corners anyway. Like, you don't need to be constant, especially as I'll explain later in the presentation. Like, you can hit the enemies behind wall, you don't necessarily need to be in the line of sight all the time. And it doesn't really cover any weakness of the Range Blaster, which is like the horrible paint output, mobility. Like, Ink Strike doesn't do much. It doesn't synergize well because Range Blaster is very aggressive, wants to be not exactly like frontline because it's a mid-range weapon, but it wants to push a lot and to go a lot into the enemy territory to make kills. And Ink Strike just the opposite. It wants you to be far from the opponent to just use it safely. And it just doesn't really synergize well, like it doesn't stick a lot with the game plan. However, it became amazing thanks to the custom Range Blaster, which had Flash Bomb and Kraken. Oh boy, was that great. I mean, Splash Bomb is really good. Like, it gives it more kill options, which is nice for a very aggressive weapon. And you can use it to just place it on your feet to just basically prevent opponents from getting close to you, which is really appreciated for a weapon like Range Blaster. And Kraken Royale, I mean, Kraken Royale was, in Splatoon 1, was the most broken special ever made. And it was great for a offensive weapon. It worked as a panic button, it did a lot for it. And yeah, as I said, it was the best weapon in the game. Yeah, that was an amazing kit, which synergizes well with Range Blaster and amazing all around. Then there was Grim. Range Blaster was not that good at custom, but it was still good. I mean, he had Burst Bomb and Killer Whale. Burst Bomb was actually very good for Range Blaster. It could combo with the Range Blaster, especially since, like, compared to Splatoon 3, the Range Blaster did more damage with the indirect hit, and the blast radius of the Burst Bomb was bigger, so like it was a very scary kill option. And you can compensate very well for the lack of paint and mobility for the weapon. Because it's a Killer Whale, yeah, it's not as good as Kraken, but it's still really nice. Overall, like, thanks to how the way, especially like as time went on and the game was more centralized around quick respawn, stealth jump, and just overall very aggressive at the end of Splatoon 1, and thanks to the incredible kits, especially Custom Range Blaster, it became one of the very best weapons in Splatoon 1. If not actually, like, Custom Range Blaster was arguably the number one weapon of that game. It's a contender for that. And now we get to Splatoon 2, which is basically the opposite. I mean, it got some reworks. Like, it was buffed in some areas, nerfed in some areas, which, you know, is fair. But then there was Jump RNG. For those who don't know, Jump RNG means that some weapon, like the weapons that are affected to it, like Flashers, Splatlings, and starting from Splatoon 2 Blasters, just basically lose player accuracy. Like, they can run, like, the shot can randomly deviate, which can make you missing a shot even if you actually aim correctly, which for blasters is really, really bad. As I'll explain later, blasters really want to hit enemies over ledges, and for that you usually need to jump. And I mean, jumping in general, in one-to-one combat, we usually like to jump to throw off the enemy aiming, and because, I mean, thanks to the blast radius, you can afford it better. Like, compared to most weapons, they can hit very well, even when jumping. jump RNG is really, really bad for blasters. Then, like, the game overall was not as fast-paced, aggressive as Splatoon 1, and there also was ink armor. Ink armor was really bad. I mean, blasters are all about killing, and ink armor just prevents that. Like, imagine you're playing range blaster, you get a direct hit, and the opponent doesn't die. That's basically what ink armor was. All of these things combined basically almost killed the weapon. Like, it was still played a lot in solo queue, like in S rank, because I mean it still had big upsides if you know how to use it. And as I said before, thanks to Prochara and how good it was in Splatoon 1, there were a lot of fans of the weapons, but really wanted to play it despite how much worse it was. But high level play was almost killed basically. It just fell off a cliff compared to Splatoon 1. Like, the kits were overall not amazing. I mean, Vanilla had Suction Bomb and Inkstorm, which is nice. I mean, Inkstorm was a lot better than it is now. And Suction Bomb is not the best weapon, like, not the best bomb to give to Range Blaster because it takes a while to burst, but it's still good. I mean, it's still Suction Bomb. Suction Bomb is nice on basically every weapon you give it to. Then Custom was guttered. I mean, Curling Bomb is nice for mobility, but it's not as good as other options. And Bubble Blower Bubble Blower was amazing, but Range Blaster was not the best weapon to make use of it. There were just other weapons that use it better, so like, why use Range Blaster instead? And then there's Grim Range Blaster, which was actually the most played one. It had Burst Bomb again, which is still great for the reason I said before, and Tenta Missile actually works well with it. Like, there's still the fact that you need to go behind cover like King Strike, but the thing is, like, the location effect of Tenta Missile is really good for blasters. So they're like, yeah, it goes behind, like, you have to just leave the battlefield for a bit, but you come back with a big advantage, and you can especially be scary to hit enemies behind cover. Like, Tenta Missile actually work a lot better than you might think at first. Grim Range Blaster was the only one that was actually decent. And there was one Japanese player that actually made big results with it. If you want to delve more into it, I have a video about the whole history of a Range Blaster. You can check it in the top right corner, preferably after you watch all this video. But yeah, I mean, Range Blaster in Splatoon 2 was a letdown compared to the previous game. And then we come to Splatoon 3, which is basically a renaissance for the Range Blaster. I mean, for one thing, it got a sick new redesign. I mean, just look at it. It's beautiful now. It's a very cool redesign. Makes it more distinct, more cool, and yeah. Now, the thing is, no more ink armor, which is definitely nice for blasters. The game is much more aggressive again, compared to Splatoon 2, which is a good environment for blasters in general. And there was Intensify Action, which, among other things, Intensify Actions reduces jump RNG, which is huge for blasters. Makes them a lot more accurate again, at the cost of a bit of some gear, like a space in the gear, which is a fair trade-off, honestly. Like, it wasn't like incredibly played at the beginning of the game, but as the meta evolved, it became more and more fit for the range blaster, and its viability rose up through time. And it's now probably one of the best weapons in the game again. Not as dominant as it was in Splatoon 1, but it's still amazing. At the time of making this video, that is. And I mean, both kits are actually good. I mean, it only has 2 kits this time around, because I don't know, Splatoon 2 just, for some reason, Splatoon 3 for some reason, even though it's Splatoon 3, it doesn't have 3 kits. I mean, why? But I mean, both kits are good. I mean, Suction Bomb, as I said before, not amazing, but still nice for it. And Wavebreaker, I mean, Wavebreaker is not a good special. But Range Blaster is, out of all the weapons in the game that have Wavebreaker, is definitely the weapon that makes the most use out of it. Actually synergizes very well with the main weapon. Because, I mean, for one, if we actually get hit by the Wavebreaker once, then it's enough for the Range Blaster to just kill any, like, if you just get hit by the Range Blaster after the Wavebreaker, you just die. Which is very scary. And the location effect is nice. Like, as I said before, the Tenta Missile location is very good for Range Blaster. So overall, yeah, not amazing special, but it's fine. And then you have the Custom Range Blaster, which is basically a throwback to the OG Custom Range Blaster from Splatoon 1. It has the exact same kit, Platinum and Kraken Royale. Platinum, as I said, is really, really good with Range Blaster. And Kraken Royale is still good, albeit not as it was in Splatoon 1, because Kraken Royale is way more balanced now. It has more weaknesses, it's less explosives, it's not as good as a Panic Baton, but it's still nice. And both kits are good. It's hard, like, it's still debated which one is better. I mean, personally, I go with the Custom Range Blaster, but they're both really good, honestly. I'd say it's either up to preference or maybe you just use both and pick which one you want to use based on the map and the game mode. Is a gear guide for Splatoon 3 specifically, like roughly what you want to build for a range blaster. Like this slide is the necessarily more competitive one, and then the next slide is gonna be a fun build. Okay, so as I said before, intensify action is a must. Like no more than 2 to 3 subs because, or maybe even a main, because that's enough to get your jumping shot consistent enough that you're happy with it, but not at the point where you really take up too much space in the gear. Comeback and quick respawn are great for the weapon. I mean, comeback is almost always used. Like the only occasion in which comeback is not used is in the fun build that I will talk about later. Otherwise, just run comeback. It's really good. And quick respawn is really nice because, I mean, obviously you want to die as least as possible, but given how aggressive it is and its exploitable weaknesses, it is gonna die. And quick respawn is gonna activate quite a bit. So yeah, overall you can be very good on the weapon, and it's almost always played. I don't say it's necessary, but it's really incentivized. And stealth super jump, which is, I mean, basically any aggressive weapon, any non-backline or support weapon uses stealth jump in the game. Like a bit of swim spin it's not necessary, but it's really nice because to compensate for the low mobility the weapon has. And then on some of the abilities that I'm showing. Quick super jump is nice on most weapons in the game. Ink resistance is nice. Again, it's nice on most weapons in the game, but I say it's especially nice in range blaster because it's really appreciated by a weapon that has low paint. Like it can really help you in getting out of sticky situations. Then probably the least important one, but special reduction can be nice. Yeah, I personally like to run it because you get one or maybe even two more special in the match, which can be really good. Then another one which I didn't put but can be nice is secondary weapon resistance. That's nice. You can consider it. Now the fun build is opening gambit. I mean, it's not competitive because it's not consistent. Like it's very high risk reward. Like if it doesn't work, it's just a liability. If it doesn't go as planned, but it can be very fun. It heavily leans into the hyper aggro style. If range blaster is very aggressive by itself, it's even more aggressive with opening gambit. Opening gambit, for those who don't know, for the first 30 seconds in a match, you have a lot of swim speed and run speed, and while it's still active, you get 15 more seconds for each kill. So the idea is you start it and you just want to make as best of a kill streak as possible to have the effect as active as possible. Now, obviously, this build is basically requires quick respawn because if things don't go as planned, you want to minimize the worst case scenario. Because I mean, if you die, you lose a lot of time, and quick respawn can be a big help in that, and just help you maintaining even if things go wrong. And yeah, this is a fun strategy I can recommend. Not for tournaments. For tournaments, use these things. But if you want to try out for fun, this can be an idea. Lastly, a few extra tips for the weapon from my personal experience in using it. Now, the first thing is you're very strong against enemies that are hiding over ledges or behind walls. Thanks to the blast radius, you're gonna hit them very easily. While unless like they're also blasters or sloshers, they will also have a very hard time hitting you. And even then, range blasters have a lot of range, so you can still poke them at a very long distance. And ledge camping and hitting behind walls is one of the main things of the weapons. And one thing that you want to do a lot. And always, like, obviously the blast radius is nice, but unless like you're hitting in the situation I described before, always try to aim for a direct hit. Because it's always a faster kill, you'll always save up a bit of ink. And if you're up close, it's your only option. Like if you're up close, the blaster radius isn't gonna do it. You're just gonna miss them. And you have to hit that direct hit to save yourself. So yeah, like don't like always expect to hit the direct hit, especially like at the mid-range instant. But if you can, just always try to go for it. For that, I usually like to lower my aim sensitivity a tiny bit when I play range blaster to be more consistent, but that's up to preference. Now the next tip is be very wary of shulking weapons. Shulking weapons in general are very dangerous because of the low paint output you have. Like if there is a roller in the lobby on the enemy team, you just need to watch every corner of the map. And you have to rely on your teammates to paint for you to prevent it. And then lastly, but not least, Range Blaster is good against many specials, most specials in the game. Especially Inkjet, like, oh boy. Range Blaster eats Inkjet for breakfast. It's very good, like, if you're a competent player, you can demolish the Inkjet with Range Blaster. Like, they don't even stand a chance. Or maybe they do because they still do a lot of damage, but a competent Range Blaster would just demolish them. It's a great counter. Then you're also good against Zipcaster for the sim. I mean, I think the Inkjet is that you have a good range and you have a big blast radius. It can be kind of the same with Zipcaster or Bit Zipcaster. A competent Zipcaster will use the mobility to get effect, so it can be hard. But you can also use, both kids can use the bomb to prevent the Zipcaster from getting too close to you and keep the ideal distance. So like you can still fight it. It's just not as easy of an interaction with as the Inkjet. It's good against crabs because thanks to the blast radius you can hit the player behind the crab, which is kind of like hitting an enemy behind a wall. Like you can threaten crabs. You can threaten a kill. I mean, you can be using against Trizuka because you can... I mean, Trizuka is dangerous against many weapons, but you can use cover more effectively thanks to the blast radius and to the distance. Like, and you can, like, basically you can still be threatening, and thanks to the lower mobility, you can more easily hit the direct hit. Obviously, you still need to be careful because it's a freaking Trizuka, but compared to most weapons, you have a better chance against it, and you can be more scary for the Trizuka user. You can be good against Hammer thanks because of its predictable movements, it's gonna be a lot easier to hit the direct hit, but to be fair, most weapons can deal with Hammer. Hammer is just not that good of a special against good players. Well, yeah, I mean, obviously it doesn't counter as special. Big Bubbler can be a bit hard to face. You have to be wary of splashdown because if they get close to you, what are you gonna do? You just die. But overall, you can be... The Range Blaster matchups pretty well with many specials in the game. With a bit of practice, you can be a menace and shut down like special usage. And that's a very cool thing to consider in team building. So that's it for today. Thanks a lot for watching. Subscribe to get more content like this, and I hope to see you again very soon. Bye.